I'm going to discuss in this video the Supremacy Clause of the United States Constitution and the recent efforts by the state of Texas to interfere with the Border Patrol's enforcement of U.S. immigration laws. Texas has decided that it has the constitutional power to interfere with the enforcement of immigration laws by the U.S. Border Patrol, and has done so by erecting barbed wire along the banks of the Rio Grande and installing buoys in the river. The U.S. maintained that those state actions prevented the Border Patrol from arresting and processing migrants in accordance with federal law. According to the Houston Chronicle, state law enforcement officials were told, quote, to push small children and nursing babies back into the Rio Grande, and had been told not to give water to asylum seekers even in extreme heat, end of quote. Deaths by drowning have increased as a result of the actions taken by Governor Abbott, a Republican in Texas. In a 5-4 decision, the Supreme Court vacated an appellate court decision that enjoined the Border Patrol from removing the wire. The order by the Supreme Court was per curiam and did not provide a reason for the order. The only reason that would justify the ruling is the well-established doctrine that the federal law has supremacy over conflicting state laws. The Supremacy Clause of the U.S. Constitution provides that the laws of the United States shall be the supreme law of the land. A federal statute may preempt state law when the federal law demonstrates Congress's preemptive intent or when the state law conflicts with the federal law. An example based on the Supreme Court precedent is when a state prevents or obstructs the full purposes and objectives of Congress. In Franklin National Bank versus New York, a 1954 decision by the Supreme Court authored by Justice Robert Jackson, it was held that the, quote, courts cannot resolve conflicts of authority by our judgment as to the wisdom or need of either conflicting policy. The compact between the states, creating the federal government, resolves them as a matter of supremacy. However wise or needful a state policy, it must give way to the contrary federal policy, end of quote. So that is the way the United States has been governed from inception. So the question is not whether the state action is good or bad, but whether the federal government has preempted the state from acting under the Supremacy Clause. Governor Abbott, the Republican governor of Texas, has decided to continue erecting the wire fence and preventing the Border Patrol from cutting it. Governor Abbott's statements and justification for the wire fence along the Rio Grande are reminiscent of arguments made by politicians before the Civil War, notably John C. Calhoun, a senator from South Carolina, who argued that the states do not have to comply with federal law or Supreme Court ruling if they do not like it. Calhoun argued that the states have the right to veto any act of the federal government that it believes encroaches on, quote, states' rights, a doctrine that simply refuses to die. The Republican governor of Oklahoma has expressed the same view. 4 of the Republican justices voted to keep the injunction that would have prevented the Border Patrol from cutting the wire. In effect, preventing the Border Patrol from performing its duties under federal law. These 4 justices, in my opinion, have reverted back to a 19th century political ideology that was prevalent before the Civil War, that the states had the right to nullify any federal law, including those that interfered with slavery, viewed by them as a state right that could not be abrogated by the federal government or the Supreme Court. And similar actions and arguments were made by several states that refused to comply with the 1954 implementation of the Brown v. Board of Education Supreme Court decision that required school integration. What is now happening throughout the U.S. is in substantial part related to the Republican effort to re-elect Trump as president and to regain control of the Senate in the 2024 election. Illegal immigration is a main issue that the Republicans have to achieve that objective. Many Republicans will do just about anything to keep that issue alive, including sabotaging a Senate bipartisan bill that would substantially reduce the problem of illegal immigration now. And even if that results in denying aid to Ukraine, Taiwan, and Israel. So the question now is whether this tactic will work, or will enough Senate Republicans buck Trump and his cult and vote in favor of the bipartisan bill, including ending a filibuster by the Trump-controlled senators, and then let Speaker Johnson refuse to allow a vote on the bill that would pass the House and become law with some Republican support.